the best possible way to test a liveaboard boat like the Beneteau Swift Trawler 41 is to live on board. So that's exactly what we're going to do. We're here at Beneteau Sea Trial Base in Port Genesta, and we've got this boat to ourselves overnight and for tomorrow. So sleep on board, wash on board, live on board. Use the boat just like a potential customer would, and hopefully we'll find out just what this boat is like to live with. Let's find a cabin. Now it's myself and photographer Richard on board tonight, and I could pretend to be generous and give him the master cabin, but in the name of proper journalism, I think I'm going to take the master cabin myself. So we've come out in the early evening because the weather doesn't look so good tomorrow, so we want to take the opportunity to get some good light, and we've been really lucky because the conditions out here are absolutely perfect. Not great for testing the Swift Trawler's hull, but in terms of photography and just going boating, it's absolutely ideal. One of those evenings where you could just go out without a purpose because it's just so nice to be out in the water. And as I said, it hasn't proved much of a challenge for the hull, but I'm already getting the sort of familiar Swift Trawler traits. If you jump from an IPS powered boat like I have into this, it all feels a bit more mechanical, it feels slightly more grounded, the steering is quite heavy, you can almost feel the rudders swishing through the water, but it really suits the boat and it just feels super planted. You don't have to worry too much about the steering wheel when you're tracking along straight. You may get that sort of characteristic wallow if you get a quarter-wing sea, but it really does feel solid, and the hull just pushes waves away really effortlessly. And this central helm position is really good, and you're flanked by seats, so you can have a couple of people sitting next to you facing forward. These backrests flip the other way, so they can be used as chaise longues as well. You sit quite low here. That's the only thing I think shorter skippers may struggle to see the bow, but for me, I really like this setup, especially how close I am to the helm. And as we come into the Marina now, it means I can move downstairs and show you one of the best things about Swift Trawler design. As you can see, the lovely thing about being down here at this helm is that because of this huge side door, the skipper can help out with crewing duties, even if it's just holding a fender. But you could conceivably tie a line onto this midship's cleat here, and then you can step out, attach that, and you're in. And it's all so easy. And I love that you have such a great view from down here. This door opens double wide. Great view all around, bit of a blind spot over here, and you've got twin shaft drives, really positive in and out on these Volvo throttles. There's lots of bite, and you have a nice powerful bow thruster as well. So it's slow speed around the Marina. She really is a nice boat to handle. And the fact that I can stand here at this helm as well so comfortably. Yes, the seat flips down and you can sit, but this is such a nice position whether you're out at sea or coming into berth like we're doing now. Doesn't get any easier. Now I did do a thorough walkthrough of this boat's interior at the Cannes Boat Show. You can watch that video if you click on the banner in the top right hand corner of the screen or on the link below the video. But let's have a look now, because you can see our setup for the evening. We have the Beneteau branded paddleboard drying out on the transom because Richard's already been out for a little paddle. And inside the saloon here, it's playing host to us, but it's also a charging station, it's an editing suite, and actually it's a really very comfortable setup. Now this is the first Swift Trawler with its galley aft, and that works really well because it means that you have your seating area up by the helm, which is naturally where people are going to want to sit when the boat's moving along. But you do notice that they've missed a trick and not actually put any sockets up there, so we're having to stretch charging cables across the galley to charge at the dinette. They could really do with a socket up that way. But one thing they have addressed, when we stayed on board the Swift Trawler 47, we found that the lighting was just a bit too harsh in here. You only had spotlights. But what they've done on this one is put some indirect lighting in, so if you don't need the bright light for working like we're doing now, you can have some slightly softer lighting, which is nice. And another really neat feature is this helm seat here, because this picks up and swivels so that it can face the dinette. Ordinarily, this seat would be completely useless when the boat's stationary facing forward like this, but the way that it swivels means that it can be part of the dinette, and obviously the table opens up so you can span the entire width of the boat. So I thought I might show you my cabin, the master cabin, in greater detail, because there's lots of good stuff going on here. The first thing is how spacious it feels. The bed is a good size, but you've got loads of floor space. It's dead easy to get changed, and because they have steps on both sides, it's very easy to get up and into the bed. It's also bright and well ventilated. Those long windows, which are now part of the Swift Trawler design, mean that natural light comes in really easily, and both of them have an opening section so you can get a bit of breeze through, and you have the hatch up above, which is also your escape hatch. And one key measure that they've taken inside this cabin to make it feel a bit more special is splitting the bathroom and the shower. So you have the toilet and the sink to one side, and then on the other side you have a separate shower cubicle. And what that means is that someone can clean their teeth and use the loo, and another person can be showering. And it also means you get a bit more space. Instead of trying to cram a separate shower cubicle into the same space as the bathroom, this is a bit more spacious than it otherwise would be. You get a seat, you get a nice teak finish, plenty of headroom, you have ventilation above and through a porthole, and it's a really nice shower. There's plenty of power coming through from the water pump, and also you can set the head at a decent height, so it feels like you're having a shower in a normal domestic shower. Other little details, the lighting is nice in here. I've got all the spots at the moment because I'm filming, but you have got backlighting up recessed above the windows there, which is nice, so you can lower the lighting a little bit. You have storage on both sides, hang storage which auto illuminates, which is nice. It doesn't go back that far, but you can hang a few bits and bobs on either side. Also a bit of ventilation, so you can get some air circulating through there. This cabin also has its own Fusion head unit and speakers, so that you can set your own music or radio station there if you wish. And it's nice to see that you have a socket and also USB chargers on both sides, so that people on either side of the bed can charge their phone of an evening. And then finally you have some spotlights over the bed here if you want to read in bed, and nice to see that there are repeaters for the light switches up there, so you don't have to get out of bed to turn the lights off. I think I should sleep rather well in here. Morning.
Morning.
How did you sleep?
Like a log.
Jolly good. Oh, there's a view to wake up to.
Cup of tea.
Thank you very much. Ooh, not a bad morning. So today the plan is to have a bit of breakfast on board the boat. We'll get out the marina. We've got to fuel up first actually, because we're very, very low on diesel. Out the marina, a bit of breakfast, and then we get on with the actual test. So this here is the port side guest cabin. One thing you do notice as you walk about this lower deck is it's a little bit squeaky underfoot. It's not very easy to move around at night without making a bit too much noise. This is the cabin that Richard chose to sleep in because photographers are strange, but he wanted to be in here. Now this cabin is basically the product of feedback from Swift Trawler owners who said we don't necessarily need that many berths, we just want storage, a sort of utility space with the option of a berth occasionally, which is exactly what this cabin supplies. So you have a bit more shelf storage there. You could have a washer dryer in there if you wanted, and then you have this berth, which you don't have to have, but again it's a nice addition if you might need it occasionally. There isn't actually any hanging storage in here, and ventilation isn't great because you've got one quite small porthole up there, but for an extra sleeping space it's quite useful to have. It's quite a good setup for refueling because you have the fillers for both tanks are both on the same side, so you don't have to stretch the hose over to the other side of the boat. They're contained inside this hatch here. You have a ledge, and then you also have a drain, so that any overflowing diesel goes into the drain, into the bilge, and not down onto the side deck. While we top the tanks up with diesel, I can show you the transom area. This whole section here is on runners, so you've got these two bolts down here. You can detach them, and then this whole section slides back onto the bathing platform, so you've got more floor space here in the cockpit. And this single winch here is actually to retrieve the tender, so you have a track that fits into the deck along here where these holes are. You attach the painter here to this winch, and then you can use the winch to haul the tender up across the bathing platform like this. So this morning the weather is a little bit more Swift Trawler like. There's not much wind about, however there's an underlying swell, so it's challenging the hull a little bit more. And the Swift Trawlers have such a recognisable feeling. You know, they sit at this sort of 15, 16 knots and they just feel so comfortable. Okay, it's on a blistering pace, but really you're going to have to be in very bad weather to slow them down. And this boat's got a pair of 260 horsepower Volvo Penta D4s. You can have 300 horsepower ones if you prefer. The top speed with these ones is about 22 knots. You might get 24, 25 with the bigger ones, but really, because you feel like cruising at 3,000 RPM as we are now and 16 knots, you could probably get away with the smaller engines. So at the moment, as I said, 3,000 RPM, we're doing 16, 17 knots. Combined consumption is 72 litres an hour, which is really pretty impressive, 2.2 litres per nautical mile. And this boat starts from about 360,000 euros. This particular one, up to spec with, you know, it's got pretty much every optional extra on it, is more like 500,000 euros before VAT. And I spoke about this lower helm when we were berthing yesterday, but out at sea, you know, it's just as good. I really like this position. Certainly in rougher conditions, it's nice to be able to stand like I can here and brace yourself against the seat here, and everything is nice and close. It's not, you know, a full glass bridge helm by any stretch of the imagination. You have your chart box in the middle, but you still have your analog dials, which is actually quite nice, and it suits the boat down to the ground. Again, this side door, you can stop it at various distances to get a bit of ventilation. But considering how well protected you are here, with this door wide open, you've got this great connection to the water. So yes, you're protected, but you still feel like you're at sea. And on, you know, days when it's not too rough, you can happily travel with this door open to get a nice bit of ventilation running through the saloon. Now, although the hull is very accomplished and soft riding, being semi-displacement, it does have a bit of a tendency to wallow, especially if you've got a sea on the beam or a quartering sea. It's actually doing it just now. Sometimes the keel gets a little bit stuck in the track of the wave and you can find yourself rolling around a bit, which I don't find it particularly comfortable, but some people might. It's something that's worth noting and something to look out for on a sea trial. But it's just a characteristic of a semi-displacement hull in many ways, and the payoff for that is that actually in a big sea it feels very comfortable indeed. Underneath the cockpit is where you find a large lazarette, very easy to access. So that means that here under the saloon floor is how you get access to the engines. A couple of clips and up she comes, and there you have the two D4 260s. Actually, access is pretty good. It's a bit of a drop down there, no ladder, but you've got that solid section in the middle there to jump down onto. You've got easy access to the filters here, the exhaust running out that way, and you also have really good access to the shafts and their couplings, and actually there's even enough space to get quite comfortably around both sides of the engines. historically on Swift trawlers, up here on the Flybridge at the stern is where you would store the tender, but that's gone. The tender lives on the bathing platform, so you get this big space back here to do with what you want. You could put sunbathers back here, you could, you know, lash down water toys. It's actually quite a handy space to have. And the wet bar's in a good position as well, facing into the boat, but it's away from the seating, so, you know, any cooking smells are going to blow away from where people are sat. You've got your sink, normal stuff, grill, fridge, etc. Central mast. Now you can have a T-top on this boat. This one's got a bimini, you know, personal preference. I think the bimini works quite nicely, and I do like having this central mast here because it gives you something to hold on to in the middle of the Flybridge. Moving forward, this is a nice area, nice high back, so you feel, you know, quite secure up here. One slight issue is when the seat is facing this way, say when someone's driving, it's hard to get through this gap here to get to that seat. It's fine once you turn this round. Say for when you're dining, you can slither through, but when the seat's facing forward, it's a little bit awkward. With a starting price just over €360,000 excluding VAT, the 41 feels like a lot of boat for the money. This is a versatile machine, as adept at cruising at 6 knots where the range is 850 miles, as it is loaded up with water toys for a trip to the local bay. Admittedly, the squeaking coming from the interior of this pre-production model did take the shine off somewhat, but Beneteau has reassured us that this will be rectified for the full production run. Before the test, I thought this might be the most rounded Swift trawler model to date, and, having spent 24 hours on board, that opinion hasn't changed.